everyone, and welcome to the Inkwell Exchange. I am so happy to have everybody join. I hope that you enjoy this episode. I am inviting our guest, as usual, at the top. So, 1 second while I get them. For a treat, we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, love, and also one of my favorite genres of books, romance. Miss Tracy, how are you? Don't
I'm
be,
nervous.
don't be. We have such a great
This is
forum
my very
and group of guests
Instagram.
here, so
So like,
you are in good company, I promise.
okay.
Well, please do introduce yourself. I just invited everybody to the Inkwell Exchange, so they are up to date, ready to jump in and learn about you for a little bit.
Okay. So my name is Tracy Cass, Tracy J. Cass. I am an author, podcaster, 20-year educator. I'm a sister, daughter, aunt, godmother. I'm a Steelers fan, a church follower. I'm a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta, and I am the 2023 Super Fantasy Football Super Bowl champion. Jim.
Ooh, I
So
love
that's a
it.
little bit
All of those
about
are
me.
really great points. We're going to ignore the fact that you're a Steelers fan because I'm a Cowboys fan and that would cause lots of problems. But we're going to dive into the author part of that. First of all, before we even get to the books you wrote, right, let's start with how did you get into writing? I feel like that's always an interesting story from authors.
I'm actually a reader. I've been a reader all of my life. My mother read, my grandmother read. I grew up with my uncles. They would read the newspaper. And so when I was a kid, my mom ordered, they would have these books. When I was a kid, you could order like CDs for like 10 CDs for $1. And well, they did the same thing with books. So with Avon books and Harlequin. And so she would order those and I just would read what she read. And so just over time, in school they give you activities and stuff like that, and you have to write short stories, and they were they were fun. I'm not gonna say easy. And so I had an eighth grade English teacher, and she called my mom in. She was like, Tracy's up here playing. She needs to be like in magnet school. And I had a college advisor tell me one time, you should be a writer. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then as I just kept reading in college, Fort Worth got its first Black bookstore called the Black Bookworm. And as a kid growing up, I read Judy Blume, all the white, Sweet Valley High. But when I found the Black Bookworm, I just fell in love with Black writing. Like it takes a lot. Like now people have to recommend white authors, which is not great because I have to keep an open mind, but I automatically am drawn to us. And so just reading over time, some of the books are still like the settings are New York or California, but I never read stories about me, about people like me and my friends, how we talk, how we relate from the South, you know. And so I felt like, I wanted to read stories about me that reflected me. Not that the other stories were bad because I enjoyed them, but, that I felt like there was a place for me. And I like to explore relationships. So that's how I got started. Really, I'm a
Okay, so
reader.
this immediately goes to my follow-up question and also kind of my pet peeve slash um, the burning question I always have about the romance industry, particularly with Black authors, is you see so many Black romance authors who have white main characters. And it always kind of throws me. So how first of all, have the characters you written always been Black? Did you have to shift in your writing to think like to actually put those characters in, or did it just come naturally to you?
Just naturally. Actually, when I read, I got a code switch when I read. So even if I'm reading a white book, they translate in my mind how me and my
Right.
friends would say it. So it becomes more relatable. And so it's not that, so I still connect to what they're saying, but I just also make it connect to me and my culture. So when I write, it's from a Black lens. And so people, I have one friend, she is always, especially when I first started, and I know she was trying to be helpful. She was like, well, when I did my book launch, she was like, you need to make sure you invite white people, you know, this person, that person. And I was like, I don't need to invite anybody but the people I'm inviting. It's not that I'm not writing for them, because I really think they can benefit and learn and enjoy my stories too. But I know my audience, which is Black women. And we experience love and joys and failures just like white women. It just may sound differently, but we understand it. And if they code switch like I have to code switch, they'll understand it too. And actually, I have a couple of former co-workers that I follow on Facebook. They bought the book and they love it. They are white too. So I appreciate their support. So it's not that I'm trying to exclude anybody. I'm just trying to make sure that my voice or our voices are heard
I
as it
really
relates to relationships.
love what you're saying here. It actually reminds me of this one interview I saw Toni Morrison do a while back, which is also one of the reasons why I got into writing myself, was that she talks about, she said, nobody asks white people why they write about white characters. We only ask Black people why they write about Black characters. And as a result, it made me always feel the flip, right? When I see Black authors that tend to write white main characters as the protagonist, or not so much antagonist, but definitely the protagonist, I always wonder what kind of flip has to go on there to do the writing. So I appreciate your take on it. So second, so I think you really kind of touched on this question, but let me know if it's anything different. You say you were a reader, so I'm guessing you started writing what you wrote. But is that really kind of the driving force behind you picking romance as a genre?
No, well, maybe kind of a little bit. Part of it, but the driving force is I'm horrible at relationships, but my friends love to come talk to me about their relationships. At least they used to. And so what I found was I'm like, okay, we have like this person is a really good person, and my friend, she's really good, but they just can't seem to get it together. Like, what is going on? And so I wanted to explore really what makes relationships, people who are great people, but they can't make relationships work. What happens? But I also then wanted to flip it and figure out what makes them actually, everybody wants relationship goals. So, but that takes work. So I want to explore that work. So the genre, I struggle with genre. When you're uploading and you're trying to sell and they're trying to make you pick your metadata and stuff like that. And it's like, what genre do you write? I romance is the default, but I'm like, I'm really not romance and I'm not urban,
Yeah.
but it's about love. So I really write love stories, and love is very complicated and it's messy and it's full of drama. So I like romance, but I like drama too. So I'm the girl in front of the TV like, oh, did you see Love After Lockup? Did you watch Real Housewives of Atlanta? Like, I like all of that. And so it all comes together and I kind of synthesize it and it just comes out on the page. So I wanted to write a love story that was true and authentic, that people I knew if they read it, they would say, oh yeah, this could have been me, or I've been in that situation. Because I read romance sometimes and I was like, she's not gonna say that like that. She's gonna cuss him out. It might make up later, but right now she's upset, or right now he's heartbroken and he's probably not. So I want to make sure that the story that
How do
came
you
off the page
do
was
that?
real.
I know we have a lot of writers who watch in particular, and that's part of the reason why I created these conversations. But I think one of the hardest things to do is to create that authenticity in books, particularly around dialogue, as you just spoke. So I'm a avid romance book reader, and at this point, people always ask me, they were like, some people's like goal for the year, for instance, like read 300 books. I was like, that is not a goal. Right? Because I easily do that. And I think part of the reason why I can get through particularly romance books so fast is they're so predictable at this point. There are the rare gem that comes along. You're like, oh, that one was a doozy. But for the most part, right, they are fairly predictable and formulaic. And I think part of the reason why it then feels that way is because they don't feel authentic. Everybody's telling the same story. So how do you keep your books, your writing fresh? And two, how does that need to keep things fresh inform your writing process?
Okay, so I'll start with the bottom question. So, especially with the first book, what I did was I interviewed my friends. And so this was, I wrote the first book. It's been almost 20 years now. And Terry McMillan was like really big, so they had the alternating points of view, and so I wanted to have a male character and the female character. So I had the female down. What I didn't have was an authentic voice for the men. So I was like, let me interview guys and see what they've gone through, what they've experienced, how they would respond. Well, what happened? My friends at work realized, oh, you're in. They knew I was writing a book, and they were all supporting. They were like, oh, why you interviewing them and not us? We want to be interviewed too. And then my sisters found out and they wanted to be interviewed. So, but it helped me understand and see how people would react in certain situations. And so from that skill, I think I just learned to stay attuned to people and what they're saying and what they're doing and observe them. And my friends know, like if you're, and I'll have, even some of them tell me, girl, you can use that in your book. And so I try to stay attuned to how people really respond in real life. And it's probably part of my skill as being an educator. So that just kind of comes together. And so with that, once I start get ideas that pop into my mind, I might make notes about it, jot it down, and then go from there.
You dived into the best part of most romance books, and I think I've actually gotten a chance to really try and think this through a little bit, is the male characters in romance books, particularly Black male characters in romance books. I think they have to be the hardest thing to write, mostly because as a reader, there's what I want them to be thinking. As a writer, there's what I want them to be thinking. And the romantic thing for them to be thinking. But also, I know a lot of those wants are driven by a female gaze, right? Not something we get to indulge in a lot in mainstream culture, but there is very much a difference. How do you keep yourself from leaning into that female gaze and giving yourself as the writer and also your reader exactly what they want, even when it may not be authentic?
Oh, it's hard because it's what I want, him to say or how I want him to react. And sometimes I'm just like, he's just gonna be a sap in this moment
Right.
because it's romantic and it's, want the feels. But I also too have a couple of friends male friends that I'll reach out to, and I'll let them. I'm like, hey, what does this sound like? And they'll be like, no, we're not gonna say that. We're not doing that. Well, what if I said it this way? Yeah, that sounds better. So you kind of have to. There comes a point in time. But in the beginning, I just write what I write. It is what it is. Just get it on the page when I can, because if you're constantly seeking that, if you seek that too early, it can be discouraging. So the first step is get it on the page. And then once you get it to a certain comfort level, then I try to make sure that I include at least one male, reader that will read an advanced copy and say, yes, you're on target, or no, he sounds like you. And I learned that from the first book, because I didn't do that, but I had done enough interviews that you know, the guy was authentic. But later on, some years later, a friend read it and he was like, in this situation, he wouldn't have reacted like that. And so this time I let him read it earlier. And so I was like, okay. So I just try to keep that same formula, like keep at least one guy handy who will tell you the truth about, you know, the language. And it gets rough, you know, and I think that's kind of where I struggle with the genre part of it, because the language can be harsh. It's, you know, some people, they don't like cursing, they don't like sex, and but I'm like, you know, even though we're educated and we have vast vocabularies, we're gonna say a nasty word or a harsh word or some foul language in this situation. It shouldn't be rampant in the book, and it should have purpose, but it should be authentic. If I know she's mad and she's saying, damn it, I'm mad at you, I'm not going to say, gosh darn it, I'm so upset. It's going to be, you piss me off. Because I want it to be it's real. Or if he's mad, like, you know, he's done with her for the moment, you know, nothing abusive. I don't do abuse, but so much, at least authentic enough to where how a man would authentically express his emotions, then that's what I want to do, because I want to draw them in too. When some of them won't, like Cass, I'll support you, but I'm not gonna read it.
Right.
But maybe one day. You know,
well, I mean, and I think that's a big part of being a writer is understanding everything you write isn't for every audience. But that's also a hard pill to swallow when there are people that you love and care about. But I like to think of it like this for any as a tip or trick for anybody out there who's facing that. I like to think of it like this. I love Doctor Who. Explaining Doctor Who to a person, you sound like a crazy person, right? An alien with two hearts, travels in time, wibbly wobbly. He's got a companion, but they're not like together, right? It's really hard to actually put into words. And if they don't like it, that's fine. You just have to let them be. That doesn't make the show or the thing you're writing any worse or not good or bad. So with that,
right. And yeah, on and take it for what it's worth. Like early on, I've had mostly all 5-star reviews, but you know, there's one or two, and I'm like, who is this? I'm trying to figure out who it is. But what I did was, to help me, I went to some famous, more popular authors. They have 1-star reviews and 2-star reviews too. So I'm like, if they can get this person 1 star, who am I? It's meant for the people
and
it's meant for.
I think doubling down on the fact that, like, as a reader, how many times have like really 1-star review or 2-star review kept you from actually reading a book, that whether it has a bunch of reviews or just like you're like, the storyline's too good, I've got to give it a try, right? Sometimes sometimes reviews are wrong. Like it lands with you and you love it, or it is corny and cheesy, but
and I don't hate. And there have been a couple of authors where I'm like, you know, this one is not for me, but this one is. So I still support the authors. Just this book, it just didn't resonate with me, and I don't even think they're bad. I just think they don't resonate with me, and so that's what I feel. But especially early on, I still had a great positive experience, but we tend to hold on to the one negative. And I had one person, she emailed me. It was a book club discussion. She emailed me, and I was like, oh my, okay, you just tell me you don't like the book. So much so that the leader had to she copied the leader, and she was like, first of all, that was disrespectful. And if you didn't like the book, all you have to do is not come. But at no point should you be emailing the author and being disrespectful. She was very disrespectful. And oddly enough, I'm highly sensitive. So I'm like, oh, my feelings, but it didn't bother me. I was just like, okay, I expected this at some point. So with that one, I managed to move on. So now I just try to keep that same attitude. Like, I know my audience, and hopefully they are receiving.
How
and so
have you been received by like the broader, or what have your interactions been, if any, with like the broader romance, love story genre, and how has it been received by other authors, other people in that industry?
I have not had that experience yet. I do know that because I've been, I try to learn about my craft. I've been doing some online little courses and stuff. I do, like you said earlier, romance is very formulaic. They have tropes and they have a formula, and it's supposed to have a happy ending at the end. And I know that based on that, I am not a romance author, even if that's what I'm claiming. But I think, but also too, urban romance, I'm not that either, because typically urban romance, you got somebody
Yeah.
selling drugs. I'm not that. You have an element like that, but it's related to their relationship. But that's not me either. But those are the closest two genres that count. So I'm like, I did read and learn from another author. I can't remember who it was, and they were like, I think it might have been Walter Mosley in a master class. I paid for the app, and I did. He was like, I don't write in genres, I write stories, and then it lands is where it lands. So that's kind of try to how I view that. But also too, I entered my second book into, it's called the Best Book Fest. And it got second place for romantic comedy and urban romance. So I was like,
I
hey,
love
somebody
it.
think it's
I love
romance.
it. I think I will say one of my mini soapbox when it comes to the publishing industry is that, like, I feel like urban has become like the Black category, and then all of those
Yeah.
stories, I'm just like, and true enough, some people love them, and that's wonderful. Like, I'd rather go to romance or paranormal romance and just like scour for like dark skinned looking covers, because it's just not for me. And I think that is really sad, because I always am trying to support, and sometimes the easiest way is to just find Black, if anyone's looking for that. Sometimes Amazon is not your friend. Go on Instagram and look up like hashtag Black authors, hashtag Black romance authors, and see who comes up, and then go find their books, rather than depending on Amazon to pull it up for you with an algorithm. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably my biggest issue with how stuff is categorized right now, is I really want to be able to find Black main characters in the romance and the love story genre. And even on the paranormal romance side, I've been, if anybody out there knows anybody who writes Black paranormal romance, please let me know. Would love to interview them here. Shameless plug. But I think that's one of the hardest
There's,
things.
I'll send you her page. I can't remember. I think it's Win Books, and I follow her on Instagram. So I'll send you her page, and she writes paranormal.
Yes, but they're hard to find. They're few and far in between. And there are a lot of, I just was watching a conversation with Black fantasy authors. Was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's looking for it, they did like a giveaway. It was wonderful. It was like 6 to 7 different authors who do fantasy and sci-fi, which I also love. I don't think I've read a full fantasy book in a while. Most of them were fantasy romance, but I do love the genre. So I will say that is also a thing. If you're looking for Black authors to support, that exists. Moving on. The other thing I really wanted to dive into with you is, outside of your books, how else have you stretched your creative muscles with writing to prepare you for those kind of longer form writings? Because I know that doesn't happen overnight.
It does not. So I started like in between, because I did my self-published my first book in 2005, and then I got a new job. I became an administrator, which was time consuming. So off and on, I would just make notes and I'd say I'm done with this, and I wouldn't do it. But then when I made up my mind that no, I really want a career in writing, I started blogging. So I've fallen off a little bit. Well, not even a little bit. It's been a year or two, but I still have the page. So I said I'm going to start doing that again. So I blog about different stuff, just TV, book reviews, football, just different things on my mind. And then I also started podcasting. And people don't look at it like writing, but actually it is a writing endeavor. Just even thinking about researching the guests, writing the questions, writing the intros, writing the closing, and it just helps my creativity because I'm like, okay, what other subject do I want to talk? Because the show is called Everybody's Homegirl, and the show is the blog, and I call it that because one day I was like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I was like, I have a friend and they are, a specialist in this and this person does that. And I'm like, I have a bunch of dope friends right here in Fort Worth, Texas, but we aren't given platforms to express ourselves on certain issues because of really location, because it's Fort Worth. It's not it's a big city, but it's often overlooked. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. And they had a free app, Anchor at the time, now Spotify for podcasters. And I just started, me and my friend of 20 plus years, we started teaching together. We got on and we just had a conversation about what we wish we knew when we were in our 20s that we know now in our 50s. And it just went from there. And I've interviewed one of my friends about wills and trust. I've interviewed one of my friends. She's an architect. I've talked about mental health and real estate and how to buy art and a tax season. One year I did tax season. I always do a single girl podcast. That's typically popular. Then I did a single male podcast. I do a marriage episode. So I get ideas from all of that. So all of that feeds my writing, and it keeps me wanting to say, okay, now let me get back to the novel because that's what I really want to do. But I love wonderful. It all.
Well, I want to make sure our viewers know how to find you, where they can support you. I know I need to go dig up that How to Buy Art podcast because you follow me on Instagram. I'm always shouting out artists that I wish I could afford originals from. Not yet. One day, fingers crossed. So definitely tell us where we can find you, website, podcast website, all of that good stuff, books. If you have books, feel free to hold them up. Let us see them so that we can make sure we support you any way we can.
So they can see them close. The second book, I guess I should show the first book too. This is the first, Labor of Love. And this is the second book, All That Matters. And you can find me on Instagram at Tracy J Cass. You can find me on Facebook at author Tracy J Cass. You can also visit my website, www.tracyjcass.com. If you are here live on Instagram, follow me today. Followers become readers, readers become supporters. So click the link in the bio, and that's my link tree, and you can purchase books, you can follow me, you can follow the podcast. I'm available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. The only thing I don't have is a YouTube because I've tried to, when I started this, I was like, I'm never going to be on video. But
you are. Here you are. And that is actually a great segue. Inkwell Exchange, everybody, this is our 7th episode. If you count the bonus episode, I posted earlier today. If you haven't gone to see that, go check it out. And the really great thing is that bonus episode is exclusively on YouTube. Woo! We have a YouTube page. I'm so excited about it. This episode will also be converted and go over to YouTube if you want to watch it again there. It'll also still continue to live on my Instagram page. So follow here for more to see all of those conversations live and in action. Also, for my writers that may tune in, we have a awesome nurturing writing community on Facebook. It's called the Inkwell Exchange. After the conversation, go there, join us, join the group. We have writing prompts. We have check-ins, making sure you're writing pretty regularly. We do polls. We share opportunities for submission. We answer questions that you may have about publishing. It's all there. You want to mingle with some great authors, come join us. We want you there. So I want to thank everybody again. First of all, thank you so much, Tracy, for coming on to talk to me about love, writing about Black love. Please, please, everyone out there, please continue to follow us along. And we can't wait to see you for the next Inkwell Exchange. It will be on Saturday at 11:15. It will be with an amazing man named Michael Gwynn. If you've been around for a minute, I've dropped his name a couple of times, so you do not want to miss that conversation. I can't wait to see you all next time. Thank you again, Tracy. Have a great rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you.